Right. Are we on?
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. We're just going to lose some of the formalities tonight. We'll just crack on with the meeting. I think there's no need to stand for me. And I just asked you to be seated, which you are, which is good. And I would like to welcome the Charter Trustees to this meeting of the Poole Charter Trustees and to the press and members of the public. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone follow the few ground rules for speaking. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand physically to indicate. Where there appears to be consensus in the meeting for a motion, I will ask if there are any dissension. When a formal vote is required, this will be carried out by a show of hands. The Charter Trustees are advised that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on demand viewing via the Council YouTube page. Before we start the business on the agenda, as you know, the Charter Trustees is a non-political body, the primary objective being to maintain and promote the historic and ceremonial traditions of Poole. I'm keen that we all work together to maintain this objective. Agenda 1, apologies for absence. Just ask the Honourable Clerk, is he given any apologies for the evening's meeting? In the absence, would Mr Jones, Head of Democratic Services, please confirm the apologies for absence received from other trustees?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We've had apologies from councillors Julie Bagwell, Judes Butt, Joe Clements, Vicky Slade, Oliver Walters and Peter Sidaway.
Thank you, Richard. Are there any more apologies? Do we know? Tony? Thanks, Tony. Well, we never know, Tony. We might rattle for it. And John Chandler, he's not here. Okay, got that, Richard. Any others? No. Agenda item number 2, declaration of interest. Mr Jones, can you please report on any declarations of interest received?
None have been received to date, Mr Mayor. Can I just ask, though, Charter Trustees, if you wish to speak, to wait for the mace bearer to hand you the microphone so that we can capture your voice on the recording. Thanks.
Agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. We will now take item 3 on the agenda. Minutes of the previous meeting on the 18th of July 24. Are these agreed as a true record? Any proposal for that? Tony, thank you. Second, thank you. Agreed, everybody? All agreed, Rich. Item number 4, the Charter Mayor's report. Mayor to say, firstly, it is my sad duty to report the death of former Mayor and Sheriff of Poole, Councillor Ron Parker. Would anyone here like to say a few words on Ron Parker's behalf? I've cleared that in the last major meeting, didn't we? So, yeah, I think he's a well-respected man and sorry for his passing. So, thanks, everyone, for that. And I think can we upstand for 1 minute silence for Ron? I think that would be a fair token. So now, just to give you a few things what I've been up to these last few months since the last meeting. It's been fairly hectic when it comes to being the mayor. We've done lots and lots. I won't go through the whole list of things because there's many things, and I think one of the things that stands out for me, or there's quite a few that stand out for me, as you go along to these events, sometimes you think, oh God, what's this going to be like? You just don't know. And every event you go to, you come away being overwhelmed, and it's huge, absolutely huge. I think one that sticks out in my mind was going along to Longsby School, and I don't know if you guys ever been there, but they did a Democratic Day, and they invited the mayor to come along to talk about democracy. So they were they were there waiting for me with some good questions. When I arrived, I sit down, and they've also got a couple of schools on the screen, so we go direct to schools, and we're talking, and the kids are asking questions. And then they took me for a tour around the school, and each individual class, there's different abilities of what can be done and what can be done. But what amazed me was the amount of laughter and care there. Some of these kids are really in a bad state. I mean, I think I went to the gym, and you got tots in there, about 5 or 6, and they probably don't know where they are, but you've got people caring for them and loving them. And I walked away from that, and I said to Warren, I said, who else would do that job? I mean, who else is there in the community that could go in there, say thanks? I mean, the kids loved it. I mean, they were really for it. But who else is there out there? So this is where I say the mayor is valued, hugely valued. May not by all of us, so I think we probably do, but the wider public really do. They're really pleased that we have a mayor. So it's huge that we keep it upstanding. And that's basically it. And we've, what can I say? It's an overwhelming thing. And I think Mark will fill you in a minute. We have worked really hard trying to, trying to assist. We've had a few problems with the budget, problems with the standing orders. It's been I wouldn't say it's a fight, but it's been hard work trying to get it, because we didn't want this to fail. And I think that's my main concern, is that we can't let it fail. It's just simple things that slightly annoyed me this week. I mean, I value my time, and I think I sort of value the work I do. But a simple thing like our names on the boards of being a mayor hasn't been put on the boards as the mayor since 2017. And I just think that's wrong. I just think, what is someone doing? Okay, they're all tucked away in a room and no one's ever going to see them. Might not. But who says they can't be made? I think we've got something on our regalia that pays for things like that. So that's not being done. And the sheriff's board's not been done since, I don't know, God knows when, 2011. And apparently they're not going to be done. Well, I think that's wrong. One day those things should be up on the wall somewhere. They should be there now. And I think if you take a trip down to the Civic and look at all our regalia, just stuck in a cupboard, it's outrageous, And the value is, I've seen the value, is what we do on the ground. So I don't feel valued from BCP, really, but there you are. Anyway, let's continue. And it's been good, and the rapport you get from the public is huge. It honestly is. You can't describe it. So let's press on then. Over to you, Richard. I've lost my way. 6 now, is it? 5. Sorry, I can't see. Right. So this is item number 5, report the Poole Civic Working Group. So we'll now take item 5, the agenda report of the Poole Civic Working Group, and we have worked really hard for this, I must say. Could the Sheriff, Councillor Mark Howell, please introduce the report and move the recommendations, please?
Thank you. I mean, firstly, although it's not in the report, I'd just like to update trustees on where we got to in terms of the accommodation. So we had quite a number of meetings in relation to trying to establish a mayor's parlour. One of the things that we've realised, especially when we go to joint events that have been held in the Bournemouth parlour, is how we really lack that kind of space. But essentially what happened was that there was a consensus essentially that we looked at an option under here, underneath this room at the end. So the parlour would be the end of part of the registry office, and we take that and have it opening onto the area in front of the Guildhall. And trustees preferred the larger option there, but there was a more overwhelming desire to make the option at the former civic centre be looked at properly, and I think there's, we need to bottom that out. We decided before we could commit to spending money in this building. So it's really important that that process is done well, and we establish, once and all, for all, whether the civic part of the civic centre can be incorporated back into the civic function. Now, in terms of the standing orders, as the Mayor says, it has been a bit of a struggle. For those of you who don't know, this originated when Councillor Salmon put forward his de-twinning motion in full council, and initially the officers thought that it was a Charter Trustees matter, but after Casey was instructed, it turned out that the Charter Trustees, according to the Casey's opinion anyway, are very limited in the functions that they can perform, and therefore the responsibility for twinning has gone back to BCP Council, but also that initiated a review of the standing orders by the officers initially, and ourselves, to establish what we can do as an organisation. And that is really quite limited, and we fought very hard in order to create a workable boundary. But essentially, we can only do things and fund things that are directly related to promoting the ceremonial aspects of the mayoralty and the regalia. So things like the Remembrance Parade, which used to be funded by Charter Trustees, now has to be funded by the council. The mayor can attend any event within the wider remit of community that he or she chooses to do, but in terms of we can't fund community events, we can only fund events that are for the promotion of the mayoralty and the protection of the civic regalia, etc. And the kind of borderline case is really beating the bounds, which we have fought hard to protect. I think there's now an acceptance that beating the bounds is an acceptable mayoral event because of its long traditions and history, and because the mayor is centre stage in that event. Other issues in the standing orders. A number of members of the working group were concerned about, because under law, as Charter Trustees, we don't have to actually engage anybody other than a financial officer to run the Charter Trustees. We could do it ourselves, if that's impractical, of course. So we engage third parties, and we engage BCP Council, have done since the creation of the Charter Trustees. But that does create a massive conflict of interest, because on the one side, we look to officers to make the Charter Trustees efficient and negotiate good contracts for us and to provide good services. On the other side, same officers are trying to make sure that BCP Council is efficient and not spending too much money. And that has proved quite difficult in some of the meetings that we've had. In fact, in one of the meetings, the legal officers, I specifically asked at the start of the meeting if anybody had any conflict of interest, and and whether the legal team were acting on behalf of the Charter Trustees. And halfway through the meeting, when things got a bit difficult, they decided that they were acting on behalf of the council and not the Charter Trustees. So it's really difficult navigating that relationship. So we wanted some wording in the standing orders that would allow the Charter Trustees in the future to engage somebody else other than the council if they choose to do so. Obviously, this might all be academic because depending on what happens with the community governance process and whether the mayoralty is enrolled into a Poole Town Council. But there's no guarantee that that's going to happen, and the Charter Trustees may continue for some while. And so it's our responsibility to do a good job and to equip the Charter Trustees for the future. There are a number of other changes that are more minor, things like the option to appoint a ceremonial advisor. That is potentially could be somebody who's a former councillor or a member of the public who's particularly has a lot of knowledge of the history of the mayoralty and can act as both an advisor, and it's also a means of engaging the wider community a little, pushing the organisation slightly beyond the boundaries of just councillors. Everything else, I think, is pretty clear as you look through the report and the standing orders. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
We'll go with Tony first, if that's all right, Peter.
Thanks. Yeah, it's not so much of a question as sort of pointing something out, because this time last year we were looking at funding events, and we actually made an award to help the Twinning Association do more for the town, and you know, we had some quite useful exchanges there, and also supporting the beating of the sea bounds. We were told that under the rules as they are now, both of those would be ultra vires, and I think that is really regrettable, because basically we support a position and we support having the crown jewel, so to speak, but we don't actually support much else because we can't. And that, I think, is quite a compelling argument to look at the future, but that's down to other people and assessing what members of the public are put through. But, you know, just really pointing out that things are so different. And this time last year, we were actually looking to improve what we do and increase the level of what we do. And then suddenly we find that even what we started to do last year, we can't do now. So, I just think that's a very important thing, that, you know, we need to support the morality and do the best we possibly can to support that. But there's not a lot else that we are able to do.
Hang on, before Pete comes in, Tony, I think you're right on that. I think the way we understand it, that, you know, there is advice there, but as you read it, it is on a case-by-case basis, and I just don't. I wouldn't have thought we were going to get picked up on things like that. I mean, you know, if it's a case-by-case business, then we can argue that case. Richard, do you want to come on any of that?
I think as officers, and probably your responsible finance officer, though, would need to be very cautious about signing off expenditure that was not deemed to be lawful for the Charter Trustees. So I do take the frustration, I understand the frustration, but we are where we are, and we've received that advice, and as officers we do need to give you that advice in informal meetings.
Just go with Peter now, please.
It's kind of related, but when you said that we can only fund events that promote the mayoralty, who defines that? You know, what's the criteria for that? You know, so, you know, does it mean that you can't say that you want to do a celebratory event touring schools and doing heritage visits, and that should be funded because it's celebrating the kind of mayoralty? Or who's deciding what is acceptable? Is there a list of criteria that says, no, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, but you can do this? If that is the case, I'd like to be able to see what the thinking of is that and what's behind it. Thank you.
Again, as what I understand, Peter, if you look at other Charter Trustees, they don't all read the same book. It's you know, they push the boundaries because they want to achieve what they want to achieve, and it depends whether we've got the belly to do it in some respects. But I don't know where that comes from. That may be a question Richard can ask in a minute. Let's have another. Can I have you, Phil, quickly, and then come to you, Millie?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. A number of us sit on both Bournemouth Trustees and Poole Charter Trustees. So the question I'm about to ask is one that I actually asked when we were considering this at the Bournemouth Charter Trustees. And the reason I'm asking it is because I didn't really get an answer then, and Councillor Howell may be able to answer, because I know he's looked into this in great detail. And it is, and again, it's because a number of us haven't seen the actual KC advice. So we've had snippets, but like everything's interpretation, so it may well be that it's a very easy question to answer. I understand from the KC's advice that it's pretty clear that the Charter Trustees are only entitled by law to do certain very limited things, and there's 3 things that are laid out in the statutory instrument. But there's a bigger question between what we're entitled and permitted to do automatically, and that is very different from prevented from doing things if we were empowered to do so. So the question that I want to ask, and we've heard from colleagues a couple of examples of stuff that we might well want to do, which frankly we probably have an idea that BCP doesn't want to do, and the remembrance services might well be one of them. Do we know what the advice is if BCP Council, for instance, wanted to empower us, enable the Charter Trustees to handle events that they don't want to do or handle things that they don't want to do, and therefore gave us permission? Are we prevented by law from doing that, or is it just that there are certain things that we're essentially permitted to do automatically? Because I think that's a really important distinction, because if we're prevented from doing it, fine. If it's actually just that we don't have an automatic right and we could do it if we were doing it in partners with others that have that entitlement, then that gives us a lot more ability to do things which might be quite interesting.
I'll come to you, Phil. The only thing I will say on that, it was due to Mark's, I wouldn't say harassment, but Mark asked on our behalf to see the report. And I don't understand why the Bournemouth Charter Trustees haven't seen that report in full. But I think maybe you haven't got Mark on your team.
I want to think.
Yes, Mark. Yeah.
Microphone.
Yeah. Who was Millie next, Phil?
I think Mark wanted to just address.
Do you want to? Mark, please, Will.
Yes. So the issue is, and it comes back to this point about, we are instructing BCP to carry out the various officer duties, because we can't do anything unless BCP agree to do it. And if they feel as an organisation that they would potentially be breaching the law, they're not going to do it. And in the standing orders, the legal department tried to introduce some wording which had said we could only do things that were specifically stated within the legislation, which is a statutory instrument, which is very brief, and that would be too restricting, and it's not really how the law works. So we changed that so that it says that we can only do things that are within the law, and that gives us a broader interpretation, opportunity for case law and argument, but functionally it comes down to really, I think, the working group deciding that something would be a good thing to do, and then negotiating with the officers as to how to deliver it. And as I said, the beating of the bounds is kind of being accepted as something that we can do, but anything else, also going to the point about the awards, we can have an awards ceremony, but it have to be awards for the person or organisation that has done best to promote the heritage of the town, the mayoralty, keep it within those kinds of boundaries. So I've been in contact and attended meetings at the Association of Charter Trustees, so I've spoken to quite a few other people in other Charter Trustees, and a lot of them operate way beyond the rules that we're being held to now, but they often have very limited officer support from separate organisations from the main council, and therefore, and they're probably more prepared to accept risk. We're not in that situation. If we want to deal with BCP Council, and practically given the community governance review, it would be pointless changing that arrangement until we know how that works out. But
Thanks, Mark. Millie, do you want to come in? Or was it Andy? One of the two.
I feel awful. Sorry, Andy. Really, Mark has just made my point, which was around risk and whether we as a Charter Trustees would want to take on the risk of challenging that level of Casey advice. And my gut instinct is that considering the lifespan of the Charter Trustees may be limited, we don't know yet, but I would absolutely, be very cautious about whether we want to take on a potential legal battle and actually how we would then fund the liability of that if something was to go horribly wrong with it. And I think other Charter Trustees may be willing to, but it does really worry me that we would put ourselves in that position. And I think Phil's question is probably something more pursuable rather than around us, whether we would want to just say, no, we want to do something else to the council. Thank you.
So I take a slightly different view. I think, Mr. Mayor, you started the meeting talking about the difference we make and the benefit of what the Mayor does. I just looked it up. The twinning has been going between the two towns for 48 years in terms of the Twinning Association, but I can remember going and twinning with the hospital in Cherbourg for longer than that, and as long as probably since we stopped flinging cannonballs at each other, these two towns have had a positive relationship. And I really struggle with the idea that advice equals you can't do it. Yeah, clearly we should take Casey's advice. I haven't seen the advice. It's obviously been within the working group, but it's not been around all the Charter Trustees. We as Charter Trustees should have the opportunity to actually say what we want to do. And if that is that we do want to support twinning between ourselves and Cherbourg, actually we are two ports with a lot in common and a stretch of water between us and ferries going back and forward every day. Surely we should be on very good terms. So I absolutely accept it's a risk assessment. We've got risk at the end of the meeting. Are we at risk of being at war with France? Are we at risk of being in the same position as obviously Bournemouth find themselves? I don't think so. And I think that's something that we as a Charter Trustees looking after the Trusters should have the opportunity to debate that and come to a decision of our own based on the advice of our officers and the advice that we've had from the KC. And so that's my view on that. If I can, while I've got the microphone, two other things. One was just the removal of the word charter from the Charter Mayor. And I worry about that in terms of, we have the mayoralty on the basis of a charter. I'd just like an understanding of why the word charter has been struck out through the document. And not least, again, because thinking about the devolution process and the idea there's going to be potentially a mayor for the heart of Wessex, I think the word charter actually helps with differentiating ourselves from that role. So I just wonder whether that's a wise thing to be doing. And the third thing was just a query about the employing others. I value the team that we've got and the time they take and support us, but the question was whether it's all or nothing. So if we find there is a role that we think that needs to be changed, is there something we can do around that specific role, or do we then have to sever with BCP and find support in all the roles? And again, that wasn't really clear in documents, so I value that. Thank you.
Going back to your point, Mr. Mayor, that you made at the beginning, I'm looking at the third bullet point on the CT functions. I really don't understand why those boards haven't been updated and why that wouldn't be a Charter Trustee decision to do it. I mean, who's made that decision? Why? And is it a matter of funding? And if it is, then there is some money in the pot. Should that not be something that we're doing? Otherwise, it's just lost to posterity, and I don't think that's acceptable. And I also would just like to say as well, why the hell haven't we seen the full KC advice? I mean, are we, what's the reason? Are we not trustworthy or something? I'd really like to know that. Thank you.
Mark, I'm going to pass you to Richard. Richard might be able to answer that one as well.
Well, this is a bit of story here, I think. We were refused the KC advice initially, and then I think again, and eventually we insisted that we see it. And then we said we wouldn't pay for it because we didn't commission it, because it was £11,000 for each Charter Trustees. And then it suddenly appeared within the budget for this year that in the documents the officers had produced. So I actually rang up the clerk of the barristers and asked them to confirm that the council had actually, instructed the council. Sorry, the council had instructed the council on behalf of the Charter Trustees, so that we could rely on the information in the opinion. And suddenly the money disappears out of our budget this year and back to BCP. So, this is again referring to this conflict of interest point, that there is a perception, I think, amongst some trustees that perhaps the council has seen the Charter Trustees as an easy way to extract some money to help its finances. And in the past, the trustees have kind of let that go with all the merger and, people being preoccupied with other things, and not many people having performed the civic roles. That some things got lost. But I think as time is going by and more people have done the civic roles, there's a bit more engagement amongst trustees and an understanding of what we can be as an organisation and should be. And we've been trying to push back. And absolutely. So the answer to the question is basically, as I understand it, the advice, the opinion was BCP's advice, because they instructed the council for the BCP's purposes, not for the Charter Trustees' purposes. But still, I think the Bournemouth trustees should push to be given it. And indeed, we were told we shouldn't circulate it beyond the working group, but it would be up for the broader trustees to ask for that to be circulated, I think, if they wanted to do that. Just in relation to Andy's points on twinning, I think that's a battle that we can't win at this stage, but certainly what we can do, because we are all councillors, is that we can hold BCP to its obligation to properly fund the twinning arrangement and make sure that those twinning networks work. Because really, we can talk about separate organisations, but for the mayoralty to work properly, the BCP and the Charter Trustees need to work together. And, for example, let's take economic development. The mayor should be front and centre of promoting economic development in Poole. So the economic development team should be extending invitations. And it's just common sense. And that kind of thing is not happening at the moment. There's not that crossover and acceptance within BCP Council that the mayoralties are important, because BCP Council, in my view, doesn't think on a place-based, locality-based, town-based mentality. It thinks, in this kind of global cross BCP arrangement that, for which makes sense in terms of collecting rubbish and dealing adult social care and things like that, but doesn't make sense for promoting the town. In relation to your third point, which was about can we vary the nature of the roles that we were getting performed by us, that's links in with the budgetary item, but we haven't insisted that there's going to be a proper SLA performance, and we need to go through the process of assessing what's being supplied to us, because there is some unhappiness about the supply arrangements at the moment. And we've also said that we need to communicate better to the public, and we have had the council's chief comms officer in to talk to us about how we might get additional support through the council for comms. I forget your middle point, Andy. The Charter Mayor. I think there was a general feeling that the legislation doesn't say Charter Mayor, it just says Mayor. The Charter Mayor appeared, and I think there was certainly, it was my view that the Mayor of Poole is the Mayor of Poole, and calling it something else other than the Mayor of Poole might actually undermine it, especially if another Mayor of Poole starts popping up in Poole Town as a result of the Poole Town Council, and if it doesn't turn out, because we've still not been informed of exactly how the process for how the mayoralty here, what happens to it, if there is community governance, especially if there's community governance in only part of the former former Borough of Poole territory. It's all very confused at the moment. But it's a moot point. I mean, I fully accept some people might prefer charter mayor to mayor, but we decided to go with mayor.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Maybe I'll let him go a little bit longer through because there's quite a few things to explain, and some of those standing orders were fairly awkward. When it comes to Karen's point about the boards, I mean, I suppose they've just been hidden away and wrapped up in bubble wrap and forgotten about, but I would have thought it was a matter of... Mark, I actually don't know who's, maybe Richard can help me, who's actually employed to actually scribe those things on, but I would have thought it was a matter of respect. If someone gives up a year of their life to do something, you put their name on a board to honour that. And I don't think there's much cost, and what I've seen, it looks like sticky back plastic, so I don't think there's an awful lot of cost on the mayoral boards. I think the sheriff's ones are probably a slightly older variety, and they might need scribing or something, but still I think it should be something that's, going forward, I think when the mayor's made up, I think his name should go on the board, and if he's useless, it can rip it off. But I think but yeah, I think that's just protocol, and I think that's just something that should be done. It shouldn't be forgotten about. But it just goes on the ongoing problem that we have not having somewhere to hang these things and meet people and say thanks. But there you are. That's where we are. Should we press on then, Richard? Richard, you want to say something?
Yeah, but can I just cover a couple?
Richard wants to pick up on a couple of points Mark made.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a few things really I've picked up. The Casey advice is protected by legal privilege. I can't respond to you here and say you can have it or you can't. It is protected by legal privilege. It is now engaged, as the Sheriff has said, by BCP Council, so it is their advice. We wouldn't normally share Casey advice. In fact, it's extremely rare, I would suggest, if ever, to share Casey advice with members. It is there in that professional sense. In terms of the boards, can I take that away, Mr. Mayor? You referred to a couple of dates in terms of when it was last updated. Some of those were I think the Sheriff's one was well before...
I think I've been told
2011. 2011. Well, that was well before LGR. So that's not part of the Charter Trustees. No. I think the other one you said was 2017. I will need to find out, because those are under Poole Borough Council days. So there may have been a decision under Poole. Forgive me, I don't know. I need to take that away and look at that. We can certainly get some quotes to get those updated, bring those back. You have reserves, and we could possibly do that and get those updated. I
think we should. I think that should
absolutely. So we will take that away as an action.
Yep.
There was a question around what we can do and can't do, and it's a case-by-case basis. So we will assess those, and we have had conversations around activities that may support the mayor. But if you are stepping over that line as officers, we will need to give you very strong advice that something is ultra vires. And the fact that other Charter Trustees across the country may be doing some of these activities does not make that lawful or right. And I'll be honest, if we do things here that are unlawful, it is probably going to get picked up. It will then be challenged, and we could then end up in hot water on those. So I think we have got a community governance review coming up. I'll be honest with you, I would suggest that we let that process run. You will then have some further information about what the future might hold in terms of local governance arrangements in Poole, and then you can make some further decisions going forward on those issues. And can I just say, Mr. Mayor, because a few comments have been made about not supporting the mayoralty, and I appreciate that may be the broader BCP, but my team are absolutely dedicated to supporting yourself, the rest of the Civic Party and the Charter Trustees, and promoting the mayoralty as much as we can. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Marianne. Oh, sorry, you're first. Sorry, I jumped over there.
Thank you. When we're talking about... sorry, I put my hand up a few minutes ago. Yeah. When we're talking about potential legal challenge, and like Richard just said, it would be challenged. Well, by who? I mean, where's the public interest in pursuing us, and who would be sort of mad enough to use their private funds to go after us for attending C-bands? I just don't see what the actual consequences are likely to be, even if we broke rules on a technicality.
Marianne? Sorry.
Thank you. I share virtually all the concerns that have been expressed at the moment, how that we have basically being emasculated at the whim of, well, I say whim, that's probably not a fair word, of a KC, when you compare with what lots of other charter trustees do and have in their constitution. I mean, look at Bath's, front and centre is twinning. If they can do it, why can't we? But anyway, we are where we are and we're stuck with it because this KC was involved without us asking for him to be. But mine is a very specific point, a word or two words that I think should be taken out. In item 6, order of precedence in procession, and it refers to honorary aldermen. I don't know when we had an alderman in Poole. There is no mechanism for us as Charter Trees to create aldermen. There's no mechanism in the BCP constitution, as far as I've noticed, for aldermen. So those words ought to come out. They do not exist and have not done for I don't know how long. Many, many, many years. So those words, I don't know why they're even there. They need to come out.
Mr. Mayor, again, it's for Charter Trustees to determine that. You're absolutely right. Honorary Alderman is a BCP designation that will be granted. I think, to be fair, these standing orders that you have were based on model standing orders that were provided to us in ahead of 2019 when the Charter Trustees were established. I suspect it was in that original version. If you haven't got honorary aldermen, clearly if you did, then they would still fall under your list, but probably quite appropriate to take out honorary aldermen on that basis. I think just coming back to the issue around challenge, if I can, whilst there may not be a legal challenge in terms of your precept and the cost that might go through that, I think that there could be a reputational damage that's caused by having unlawful expenditure paid for by the residents of Poole. It's probably, again, it comes back to risk, doesn't it, and those issues. But again, you've got to act lawfully, and we will give you that advice as officers. Again, I'll look at the Sheriff as the chairman of the working group.
Yeah, Marion, of course, you were on the working group, so like I did pick up on that very late on, the alderman point, and it's not actually defined either in the defined terms. I'd be quite happy for it to be taken out, but I assumed there was some historic reason for it being there, and yeah. Yeah, I'd be happy for it to be removed. I don't know if that needs a formal vote.
Sorry, Felicity.
Whilst we're on that sentence, can we also change the free men to add in a free woman? Yeah. Or make it a free person. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, Fizz, I think Richard's going to come in on that.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I think you're absolutely right. I think the legislation has been changed to, I think it actually refers to free men and free women, but can we check that and actually make sure that reflects the legislation, the wording of the legislation, because that is the designation. I don't want to say change it to free person or free people, because I think we need to reflect the regulations in terms of that designation, but it certainly has been amended to allow that.
Yeah, I know. Good.
Well, again, those designations are by regulation, so we probably need to reflect the regulations that are there, and I think they are free men and free women, which I don't...
Preston City Council have got free women and free men, but I don't know. Yeah, just as an example.
Thanks, guys. So that's good debate on that. So are we happy to take a vote on this then? Oh, is that right? Do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder for this? For the standing orders. So Mark, you're going to put it forward, Mark?
Mr. Mayor, can I just clarify then? So the Sheriff has proposed the adoption of the standing orders as set out on the agenda, and I think subject to the removal of honorary aldermen and the changing of the words from honorary freeman to the right term for honorary freemen or women and free women, or the appropriate term that's in the regulations, that the standing orders as amended, as proposed, be adopted. And then we need a second. And we need a second on that.
Facilities?
Just that Andy raised the point about charter. I personally prefer to remove the charter, but maybe we could have a check whether everybody's happy to remove the charter word.
Should we have a vote
A
on
proposal
that?
to leave.
No,
I'd prefer. Oh, okay.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think anyone else has indicated a support for Councillor Hadley's suggestion to put the word charter back in.
And we sort of agonised over weeks as well, and we so I think we should.
I suggest we do the first motion.
Phil, did you want to come in on something there? Sorry.
Did you want to discuss the word charter?
Discuss the word charter at this moment. Should we wait? Just troublemaking, Andy. Where are we to now, Richie? Okay, item 6. We run on to the budget now, and we will now take this item on the agenda, budget and precept for 25-26. Mr. Filmer, responsible financial officer. Would you please introduce the report, please, Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, Charter Trustees. So this is the first finance report we've had for 24-25. So just a quick introduction in terms of where we are in terms of in-year monitoring for 24-25, and you'll see all the detail on Appendix A to the report. But we're currently forecasting underspend of just over 21,000. And what that means in reality is we're drawing less reserves down to support the budget position than what we had originally anticipated. And principally that underspend is down to the advice off the back of the KC that we've spoke about already, which has limited some of the events that are planned to be carried out in 24-25. Appendix A also has the 25-26 proposed budget, and again it's already been mentioned, but we've had at least 2 meetings to go over the budget in detail and been certainly scrutinised on all areas, including the recharges from the council. So it's helped shape the budget that's in front of us today. As I said, a number of the budget lines have been removed, so the support for Remembrance Sunday and all the grant funding that previously had been in place has all now come out. But we have increased the hospitality budget because there was a feel that we will do more talks to support around the regalia, and so hospitality budgets would need to be increased to sort of support that. And also, again, it's been mentioned, but we've also increased the communications budget from an existing £400 to £10,000 for next year. There's been a small increase on the support charges from the council, but there has been a 7k reduction on the staffing costs from the council, reflecting some changes in staff. Figure 1 of the covering report sets out the reserves that the Charter Trustees hold. Now, you'll see for 24-25, we're anticipating a drawdown of 46,000. For 25-26, we plan to use 25,000 to support the budget. This still leaves about 49% of the precept that we're raising, and it's still higher than what, in my professional view, would be good risk cover, which would be around 20%. So moving on to council tax, we've initially set out the council tax base, and that's increased for the borough of Poole. That's a reflection of the general growth in number of properties for Poole and also the introduction of the second homes premium. So taking all that into account, it's proposed that we set a council tax precept for 25-26 at £132,324, and that allows the Band D charge for 25-26 to be frozen at £2.14. So I will stop there, Mr. Mayor. Happy to take any questions.
Can I open up to the room if anybody would like to ask some questions? Yes, Andy.
Just a comment. I think, given the pressures on people's household incomes, hopefully not increasing our precept will be a welcome move from the public. Thank you.
Yes, Andy, I agree on looking at there's no increase this year, but I think it's really good value, and I think it's something the residents won't. I mean, they're going to get hit on an increase in council tax shortly, but I think the £2.14 is. I think they consider that a fair payment of the work the Mayor does. So, yeah, I think it's a fairly strong budget there, really. So can I have someone to... sorry, Peter.
Thanks for all the work, by the way. I know I was part of it, but not the bulk of it. The jump from £400 to £10,000 in terms of the communications or comms budget, what's the reasoning behind that? And is there a plan that's been scoped out which would justify such a massive increase? Although it is a valuable piece of work, I'd just be interested in that scoping.
Yes, Mark, I'll give you over to Mark. I wasn't too sure that was in for the comms on. It is in the. I kind of thought that. I think it's probably. But I actually thought that should be part because we work so close to BCP. I actually thought that might be. BCP might have helped us with that a little bit. I mean, you do an awful lot of other things, but I think if we worked together slightly more when it comes to comms, I mean, there's value in to both of us. So I think Mark suggested the 10,000, but hopefully we wouldn't have to spend that, would we, Mark?
Well, the 10,000 is just a figure. There was a discussion about whether you should put a figure in because we haven't yet developed a work plan for that associated with it, and the balance of the members of the group thought it would look better to have a figure to work from rather than to use reserves once we've decided. It shows more forethought to the public. But as I said earlier, we had the Chief of Comms in to explain the areas that we thought needed promotion, and she's gone away and is going to come back with some suggestions, which we will then consider, whether it would be appropriate to engage the council to deliver certain services or possibly engage somebody else. The issue at the moment, basically, we do no promotion. There's no point this organisation existing unless the public know that we exist and know what we're doing. Currently, kind of 95% of the promotional work is done free of charge by the Mayor's partner, who works incredibly hard, and that's largely on Facebook. And there are many other channels there. There's different age groups and demographics that don't use Facebook. We have to decide as an organisation whether we're going to do this properly and promote what we do to the town. And I feel that we need to do that. The level to which we need to do that, we need to discuss in the working group and what's appropriate. But what we're doing at the moment is just not acceptable. It's such a low level, in my opinion.
Okay, that's a fair answer on that. I think that's right with that, Peter. So can we have some? What do we need on this one? So can I have someone to propose the budget then for 25-26, please? Peter Cooper, and someone to second it, please. Either or.
Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, that's recommending the proposed budget for 25-26 as set out in Appendix A is approved, and the council tax requirement and precept of 132,324 be approved.
Yep. We all good with that? Maybe too, Richard, I can't see with glasses. Item 7. Right, move on to item 7. Sorry, guys, I'm really tired and I actually can't see it, so I'm struggling with this. So we will now move on to item number 7 on the agenda, review of the risk register. Mr. Fraser, Deputy Head of Democratic Services. Neil, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so only a brief one. Trustees may see that the risk register is in a slightly different format this year. That is because we have adopted the recommended format as recommended by the Council's audit team. So it is in their preferred format now, so that's why it looks a little bit different. In terms of the actual content, all fields remain present that were on the risk register last year, and they have all been either kept the same or downgraded due to the mitigation actions taken to address those risks. There is one additional risk which relates to the consequences of not agreeing the SLA, the service level agreement that was referred to by Councillor Howell earlier. That can be found in the document. But the recommendation is that this be reviewed by trustees, commented on as appropriate, and then approved. Thank you.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone like to speak on this? Karen, you go first then.
Thank you. I probably sound like a broken record here, but the items on the risk register about the historic and civic assets says they're being stored correctly. And it's not a criticism. Please don't take it as that. But it says they're being stored correctly. But you know that I was with you when we did, with Mark as well, when we did that tour, and they were not being stored correctly. And I was really most upset. And I wrote to the chief exec, and yeah, that went well. And I still haven't had assurance that the suggestions that we made for storing things, that has actually happened. And I want more than just a risk register saying they are being stored correctly. I would really like to know if we have invested some of that money into custom-made protection for some of those items.
Yeah, I just want to say, Karen, I think we're very lucky we have Will here tonight, who is really up the game on the storage of things, and he's really gone to town, and it's in a much better place than it was since you looked at it. Put it that way, yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that Karen gave the background there, because obviously you were there, I wasn't. I've just thought about how we might be able to get the gross risk score a bit higher, which might perhaps push it up the agenda, because currently the risk category is just down as economic, but I think that the I can't read either. Reputation, social, maybe even political, I think that all of those risk categories apply, and in that case you could apply a score of 3 to the, a higher impact score, because basically the reason that this has got an impact score of 1 is because we've just got it down as an economic loss, but obviously there's a much greater loss than that, and then if you can times 4 by 3 you get 12, and then it's red, and then something gets done, hopefully.
Sorry, Neil, can you comment on that?
Yeah, so just to address those 2 points, thank you. So, Councillor Rampton, you were pleased to know that we, as the Mayor has alluded to, Will and the rest of the team have worked very hard to improve the storage. And my understanding is that while we haven't, I'm looking at Will, I don't believe we've secured any bespoke storage for some of these items as yet. The improvements have been made to securely store them so they're not being damaged and they are kept in a state of repair that you would expect them to be kept. More bespoke storage of things are things that we'll continue to look at, and I will provide some additional details once we have an update on that. From Councillor Waite's comments there, happy to up that score and apply some additional criteria so that it is flagged slightly higher. And then that will be reflected in a revision to this before it's published, and then following year's risk registers.
Fizz, did you want to come in on something? Sorry, Karen.
Thank you. Yeah, it just strikes me as something that may be suitable for adding to the risk register would be climate related risks. There's nothing in there about that. About climate risks, climate change risks. I'm not an expert to know whether it should be
No,
in there,
I'm
but
not
I
an
would
expert
like
either
to-
on climate, but how would that be in respect of Charter Trustees?
Well, extreme heat, for example, when hosting events, flooding, damage to property. I don't know, that buildings like that we use being affected by... I don't know. I'm not an expert on how you assess these things, but I know in other committees it's included within the risk register. So I would appreciate if it could be assessed as to whether it needs to be in the risk register or not, sort of thing.
I will take that as an action and report back.
I just want... No, it's fine. I think, Justine, Karen, would you, I think, take this this time now to invite you around and have a look at the, if you'd like to do an update on what the work and the team have been doing to secure the assets, because I know when they were dropped all around the borough, there was pretty scary stuff. So yeah, I think Will is really taking it onto himself, and I think the Democratic team are to make sure that they're in a much better place. Do you want to have a word?
Just before you come in, Councillor Rampton, I think if there is, certainly invite you into it. I personally would either like to attend or Neil to attend that session as well, so we can clearly identify and have that dialogue with you. I wasn't there on that first visit you had. We have addressed things. For instance, I think there was the spoons. They are now, I understand, in a proper box that are for spoons. I think the custom storage, I think that's for things normally like paintings and other things like that, I'm guessing. But I think actually a tour with you, a visit to the strong room, so you can have a look at those assets with the mace bearers and myself or Neil, I think would be a benefit.
Thank you very much. That's great. I would love to do that. I was more concerned about the vellum book. Was it the visitors' book? That wasn't wrapped properly. But anyway, that would be great to go and have a look. Just on it, one of the items on the risk register is not allowing the public to handle the items. And obviously, I get that you can't just let it be passed around. But there is something about stop keeping them in a storeroom, get them somewhere where they can be seen, and under supervision they can be touched in an appropriate way. And I'd really like to see that.
Well, last week we're doing a bit of a mayor on tour the next 2 months before I pass the baton to Mark, and it's basically doing lots of regalia talks. We want to get out to as many schools as we can, and many societies that want us to come out. We did one last week. It was a near disaster, but we got away with it. We had 40 scouts from Camp Heath and Oakdale were their leaders, and it was a really good event. We had myself and Mark and Will and Warren. We laid out our wares on the table there. We gave a bit of spiel, and as you said, Cam, the chaps got the guys to put the gloves on and handle the maces and things, and it was a really good night. It was, and we intend to do more of those. And again, it went down really well. So, yeah, it has to be out there. It has to be out to the public. We've got some amazing items, and Will's really done an awful lot of work now. A lot of reading, a lot of historic value to what he can tell us more about these items because he's really done his homework. It really is quite interesting, the kit we got. I've lost my space again, Richard Burley. Pete, sorry.
Thanks. I'd just like to say in the early days I helped with Mark do the itineraries down at Upton House, and I was so impressed with the mace bearers and how proud they were in the stuff and how they handled it and how they can pass comments on it. So, we've got a really good crew that really value the items that they're looking after. So I think you can be safe in that knowledge, but they're really good and you should be paid double. That's what I reckon. I shouldn't have said that, should I?
Richard, please.
I think in terms of promoting the mayoralty as well, we are in conversations with the museum. They clearly want your very impressive assets, which you have for regalia talks. So so we're having conversations with them, but absolutely we want to try and get the role of the mayoralty promoted through the museum. And we've talked again when the museum is open to maybe do regalia talks and special evenings at the museum for their clients as well. So we're taking all those. I'm glad you said around the handling of it. We certainly also did take advice from the professionals at the museum in terms of handling and storage and so on. So we are in dialogue with those whenever the assets are moved.
It comes if we haven't got anywhere to house these things present and they're locked in a safe, then all we can do really is to honour them and take them out and show people really. I mean, they are part of our heritage and the people want to see them. So I think the more we do, I think the better it is, Richard. Sorry, Mark, go on quickly.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out we have £2,500 set out in the budget for civic regalia, and we have large reserves. So I think there's ample opportunity, and this is the time to look at things like the boxes that the chains are carried in, the lack of boxes for certain key items. And this is a very small organisation with a small number of people who put a lot of work in, and when somebody comes forward and is keen to sort something out, that can make an enormous difference in the performance of the organisation and what we achieve. So I really welcome Karen's interest in this, and I fully support her in making this happening. The other thing I would say, although it's the stuff that we want to protect, having looked at it all, there's also some stuff there that I think personally we shouldn't be keeping, and perhaps we ought to decide what that is and bring it to a meeting so that the trustees can make a decision as to whether we get rid of some. So we are storing stuff that really I think perhaps we shouldn't we don't need.
Richard, would you like to come in on that?
Just on that last point, can I again recommend that is held after that review of whether you dispose of assets is reviewed after community governance review. If there is a new council established, those assets will transfer. That new council could determine that. If at the moment you decide that you wish to dispose of those assets, they are given to BCP Council as the principal authority, and then BCP then determines what happens with them. So I think certainly we can do it, and you could prepare something for those processes, but I wouldn't recommend that you take a decision on that one until after a CGR is resolved.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I completely agree with that. That's sensible. I was going to help Felicity with the climate change point, because the present mayor accepted, who would be quite probably happy bobbing up and down above Poole in a boat, there's not much point being a mayor of somewhere that's underwater, and therefore the perhaps is some way of getting it on the risk register.
Mr Mayor, we now need a proposer and seconder of the recommendation on the report that the risk register as attached at Appendix 1 to the report be reviewed, updated and approved. I don't think there were any updates to the risk register. We are taking away the climate impact issue, but I don't think there were any proposed.
That was a revision.
Sorry.
Yeah,
some of those revisions as well.
So we
need a proposer and seconder.
And are we all agreed on that, everybody? We are. Thank you. So we go on agenda item 7, appointment of the Office of Sheriff of Poole 25-26 and the subsequent Mayor of Poole for 26-27. So we will now take item 8 on the agenda, appointment to the Office of Sheriff of Poole 25-26 and the subsequent Mayor of Poole for 26-27. So, Mr Fraser, would you please introduce the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. And again, just a quick one to say that we sought nominations to the Office of Sheriff and subsequent Mayor, and 2 nominations were received. Following a secret ballot, I am pleased to confirm that Councillor Rampton is confirmed as Sheriff-elect.
So I think, Karen, you've got to say some words now. Please. Yeah, you've got to have a speech. Oh, I think she should.
Have you ever known me not to take the opportunity to say something?
An acceptance speech. How's that, Karen?
No, I did write a few things down. So it was just really to say thank you all for your support. And I'm really delighted to be the Sheriff-elect for 25-26. And thank you in particular to Councillor Peter Cooper, for your dignified and your kind words and your good wishes. I really appreciated that. Yeah.
We met, and I think you just found out that I'd put myself forward, and I'd found out that you'd put yourself forward. And I shook your hand and I said, "May the best woman win." Did I? Well, that was because I was being kind of non-binary. But I kind of knew from then, because you deserve it.
Thanks, Pete. That's really kind. Yeah, so just briefly, I mean, 2024 was not a good year for my family for various reasons. So we're really looking forward to putting that behind us and fulfilling the role this year. And I'm just going to pledge to you that I will do my utmost to uphold all the traditions and the integrity of the role of Sheriff. And maybe Mayor the following year, but who knows what's to come. We'll just have to wait and see. But thanks, everybody, for your support. And if you didn't support me, just remember, I'm going to be carrying a big pointy stick and I'll have the key for the jail.
Millie, did you want to say something? As leader?
As leader.
What?
I have no status in Charter Trustees at all, but I was just going to say congratulations to Karen. I think, you know, I think we've all got a lot of confidence in you being a really good sheriff and then a really good mayor. What I did just want to ask, though, was whether we have any clarity around the community governance review and what happens then if we were to go to a town or parish council. How does that work? Because I would hate for us to have a sheriff who then kind of doesn't make it to mayor just on a technicality. Is it possible to get clarity on that?
Okay, that's quite challenging actually. So obviously we are, in terms of the community governance review, we are at the end of the stage 1 process. We've received the submissions from the public. We are moving into stage 2, which some of you are members of the Task and Finish group considering those submissions. Those recommendations will go on to Cabinet and then full council and be subject to a further round of consultation in stage 3, and then it will come back internally to BCP for decision in October. In terms of the final decisions. So if, and I'll take the scenario, okay, because I think that's the question around what will happen to the mayoralty. So in the event that a new town council is established for the whole or part of the whole or part of the former borough of Poole, I'll come back to some potential scenarios in a moment, and that was established. The issue is that at the moment it is likely that those elections would take place in May 2026, and they would be elections to a point. So if your sheriff-elect did not stand or was not elected in those elections, then obviously the sheriff would not continue, and that's happened in the past with the borough of Poole and indeed the Charter Trustees following elections. So that's really the transition of sheriff. Clearly, if Councillor Rampton as sheriff is elected to that new town council, whatever that size or frame might be, then that would be for the new town council to determine its arrangements. But it is highly likely, in my view, that they would take forward the history and traditions of the former borough of Poole and the Charter Trustees in the election of the mayoralty. But I can't guarantee that because that would be a separate legal entity at that point. Can I just, before you come back, if, for instance, I think there are other issues around, and Councillor Howe touched on it, around the what-ifs the Charter Trustees coexists, for instance, because if we don't parish the whole of the former borough of Poole area, the Charter Trustees will still continue, and our understanding at the moment is that that would still cover the whole of Poole. So you could end up with a town council and a Charter Trustee, the Charter Trustees appointing their mayor, and the town council would appoint their mayor, and the Charter Trustees would continue to exist. And in that scenario, Councillor Rampton, unless you resigned as a councillor of BCP Council, would still be a councillor at that point, therefore a Charter Trustee and Mayor for 26-27.
Lily?
Thank you. That's a lot of information. I think just from my own views that obviously we are going to be a little bit limited in terms of our control as councillors. It will be down to whatever that new elected body looks like, if there even is one. But I would ask that everyone in this room respects the fact that we have that lineage of sheriff and then on to mayor, and that we know that it's important to take those steps and do the kind of sheriff role to be a mayor. So I'd hope that everyone takes that to heart when we consider that. Maybe if there's a council, if there isn't, but I would really like to see Karen go to mayor as well.
Richard?
Mr. Mayor, forgive me, I should have clarified as well, is if the end result is the establishment of a new town council, there would be a shadow authority before April 26, which is the investing day of the new council, and that shadow authority would approve and set a set of standing orders for the new council financial regulations, so they've got something to work with. And that shadow authority is typically made up of councillors who represent the area of that particular new council. We did that for Throop and Holdenhurst, and I've done that in previous authorities as well.
Just want to add on one bit on that. I mean, presently what we've got, we haven't got a home, but the Charter Trustees does a good job in looking after the mayoralty and the regalia. I think those who show an interest, a lot of us here show an interest, there are a few that don't. And I think what we've got at the moment is a bit tatty on the edges, but it is, our historic vow of the mayoralty and our regalia is intact and it's safe. So going forward, it has to have that firmness and that safety and support. So we're not in a bad place. I think we are improving it, and I think we can only get better. But we need your input. I think when we're together and we can push this, I think it works much better. So we'll wait and see on that. Someone else, Phil, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to extend the discussion, but I think it's important for us to talk about this here, even though it's largely out of the hands of the Charter Trustees. But I just heard Richard say something that I haven't heard before, which I just wanted to make sure I heard it right, because actually I think it probably potentially could be quite positive. I think what you said, Richard, is if we ended up in a position where the outcome of the community governance review is that the entirety of the borough of Poole wasn't parished, that the Charter Trustees would continue to exist, and that they would continue to exist representing the whole of the former borough area of Poole. Therefore, whoever becomes the mayor, whoever is the mayor, still presides over the whole of Poole, if you like. That's different to what we've been told before, which was that the unparished bits would have the Chartered Trustees and not the entirety. Is that correct? Because that's new news.
It is indeed, and things change all the time. So that advice has come from MHCLG, and there's another example elsewhere in the country. I haven't spoken to them yet, but that is my understanding from MHCLG's advice. I'm going to contact that other local authority area and check that is how they're operating. According to their website, it does indeed cover the whole of the former area for which the whole of the area that the former authority existed prior to the Charter Trustees. Okay. So that is slightly different.
I think that's quite an interesting development, because that does mean that if, like I say, if we don't parish, if BCP decides not to parish the whole of Poole, the Charter Trustees would still exist and they would cover the whole of Poole. So we have, in turn, essentially protected the mayoralty of the former borough area of Poole. It doesn't get over the other issues that we've got around what powers the Charter Trustees actually have. Maybe that's a battle for another day, but it actually might add another dynamic to that battle as well, because it might well be that is a battle that we want to have in future about what the Charter Trustees can and should do if they continue to exist over the area. It all is very dependent on what the outcome of the community governance review is, but I think potentially a welcome development. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. That's a good point raised there. Mark, did you want to say something? Yeah. We'll call it a day.
Yeah. Can I just remind the Mayor? That the Mayor has submitted into the community governance review on the basis putting for a proposal for the whole of the former borough of Poole, because a number of councillors met at the invitation of the mayor informally and there was a general agreement that that should be an option on the table, and clearly there's a lot of support for the mayor, and one might say perhaps there's more evidence of support for the mayoralty than there is for some of the parishes that are popping up and done. So that option will be in the review.
I think the reason I put that in is for us to have it in the box. I think it's probably not necessarily, it was a view in the room. I wouldn't say it was necessarily mine, but I'm just saying I think we had to put that in to be in consideration. We done, Rich? So, who am I doing? Sorry.
So that's noting the sheriff. We just need to
Yep.
note that, and then we're closing the meeting.
So, we've done that. We don't have done that.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
I can't see it.
We were on the item for the election of the sheriff. That was for information only. There's no need to vote on that one. That actually concludes the business.
So that doesn't conclude the meeting for tonight. Thank you all for coming, and thanks for the debate. It was really good of it.